Okay, in this video, we're going to take a quick look at how to read from multiple topics. And I've created two topics. One is called users, and the other one is called page views. And one thing to note before I look at that is in this example, I'm just going to treat the data as strings, as I did in some of the earlier videos. So we're going to look at users and page views real quick. So users looks like this. And you can see for the key, we have a UID of 1, and for the value, the name is Alvin for this record right here, and then this one is 2 and Lori right here. And if I click there, you can see that value right there and that key right there. Of course, in the real world, the value is going to have more information, but I was just trying to keep this simple. So that's users, and let me come back over here. The other one is page views. And I just put a couple of records over here. One has a UID of 1, which corresponds to Alvin, and then the value for the URI is /mens. And then the other record here, again, is UID of 1 corresponding to Alvin, and then the URI value is /mens/shoes. So you can imagine that we're creating a little application to track a user and just kind of see what they're doing on our website, what kind of path they're taking on the website. So that's the data right there. I also showed the data up here if you want to see that there. So this one is called multi-topic consumer, example 1. There's also an example 2 that's a little bit more complicated. And what this one does, it imports the settings as usual. Then we're going to create a consumer layer here. So this is something different. We're creating a Z layer. You can see it's an any throwable consumer. We wrap that with Z layer scoped. And we do a consumer.make on the consumer settings that we're importing right here. So that is new. And then we're using that down here. And I'd rather call that something like, how about consumer layer? There we go. I like that a little bit better. Make sure that got corrected down there. It did. So that is a layer, and that's going to be shared between the streams, as I note right there. And then what we're going to do is create a couple of functions to process user records and another one to process the page view records right here. So what we're going to do, maybe I should go down here first and show that we're going to create a user topic stream or a user stream right here. So we do the same thing that we did before in the streaming examples where we start with a consumer, we create a plain stream. Here I provide the topic that I want to read from, which is users. And as I mentioned, I'm just going to treat everything as strings right now. So that's why these two are strings. Then we're going to tap into that to process the user records. So that's how we get from here up to here. And while I'm up here, I could show that process user records takes in a record, which is a committable record of string and string. And it's just going to print the information. So it's just going to take that record and print the key and the value. And then I use or die like I've done before. So we get a UEO of unit right there. Then we come back here and we do the same things we did before. So everything right here is exactly the same as what we did in the previous streaming video. The only difference now is that I'm handling two streams. So this is going to be the second stream. This is the page view stream. And this one, I had some problems initially, so I should note that. What I'm doing is I do a log info here, and then I say and then right there. So I have that note about debugging. So log info and then right there. Then we have the consumer, plain stream, page views, treating both the key and the value as strings. Then we're going to tap into that, do a little bit more debugging right there. Then we'll tap into that just like we did here. So everything from here on down is the same as the previous value here. The only difference is we're calling process page view records here instead of process user records. And when we look at process page view records, you'll see that that code is almost exactly the same. We're just processing page views here instead of users like we did there. So before I move on to the end here, the interesting thing is that all of this code right here looks really similar to the single stream example that we created in a previous video or a previous lesson. And the only difference now is that I have one here and then I have another one right here. Okay, so now we can go on to the end and we have the run value here. And I left this log info here from debugging, so we'll leave it in there for now. That's just fine. So we do a log info on that, starting the multi-topic consumer. And then right there, we have the ZIO scope. And now what we're going to do is say, take the first stream and zip par that with the second stream, and then provide a layer, which is our consumer layer for that. So the big key in this is the zip par, and then I suppose the second key is providing the layer like that, because this is the first time we've provided a layer in this series of videos. So that's how we process two streams. And now what I will do is, this one's called multi-topic consumer example 1. And I just was running number 2. So let's go back to number 1. Let's go ahead and run that. All right, and now you can see that that ran. So we have the two user values right there. And then we have the two page view values. So we have one right here, and then we have a second one right down here. So that is a first look at how to process two topics in your code in parallel using a streaming approach. And when you're ready to take the next step with this, I created this one over here. So this one was called 175 consumer multi-topics. This one is called 180, and I'll click on that. And this one does take those next steps. So what I'm doing here is what you've seen before. We create case classes for the data. Then we create JSON decoders for those. Then I have the consumer layer. And again, I want to rename that. While I'm in the neighborhood, get that taken care of. Then what I do is I created this parse JSON function as I was working on this code that you see in this area right here and this area right here. I realized I was doing the same thing over and over again in terms of parsing JSON. So I created this parse JSON function, and you can see it's parameterized to use a JSON decoder. So it takes in a JSON string right there, and then we do the same things we've done before in previous examples, which is the ZIO.FromEither. So we do JSON string from JSON. We do this part right here like that. And as I hover over here, you'll see that that returns the either, which you've seen in previous videos. So that's why we use ZIO from either. And that turns the either value into a ZIO value that's returned right here. And then when we come down to processing user records right here, what I'm now doing is taking in that record, then I create the user ID from the key right here. You see the result here, and you see that it uses parse JSON right there. Then we have the value, and that value creates the user that I have right here. And then I just print out that information right here. Because this can fail, I also do a catch-all on that and then have an error right here and then or die, because I want to return a UEO in the end. But I do want to see that error message right there. And it says there was bad data in the user's record here. The other function here is very similar. Again, we have the key and the value. We use parse JSON for both of those. We get the user ID and the page view. When everything goes well, we print that. If there's an error here, we print that. Again, there's an or die right here. So we return a UEO in the end. And then we have the two streams. We have this one here, and then we have this other one here. And when you look at this code here, I think you'll see that everything is pretty much the same, except for handling the error right here. So I do a catch-all on the error, then I log that. And when you look at the function here, everything is the same from here to here. And then the only thing that's different is I do a catch-all right there to take care of that error handling. So we have the error, we do a log error on that. We sleep for a second, which isn't really necessary. I was just kind of working on some things, but I should note we do the log error, and then we do the sleep for a second, and then we return the user topic stream in the end. And then this other function is almost exactly the same as that one. So again, everything in this case from here to here is exactly the same. And then we have the catch-all function right there at the end. And then in the end, our run value, I believe, is exactly the same as the previous code. So I hadn't planned on showing this code, but since I did show all of this code, this one is called multi-topic consumer example 2. So let's kill that and go back here, change that to 2, and run that again. And you see that that works successfully. And then if I put some bad data, oh, where would we put that? We could put it in here. Bear with me just a moment. So I will do something like foo, and this is in the page views. Yeah, so that's in the page views. So get rid of that. And then this one would be foo. And now when I produce this, we see a little bit of action over here right away. And what you could see with this was this new line here. It says there is bad data in the page view records. And it looks like I need a little help with my printing right there. But other than that, there is bad data in the page views record. And then hopefully our code will keep running when we have good data. So this one, where are we at now? 3? Oh, I'm sorry, user ID is 1. That one's me. Yeah, we'll just call that model 1 or something like that. How about model 2? So you can see the difference between the L and the 2. Let's produce that one. Come back over here. And now we see success over here. And there may be 2 records here as an artifact of me running this way I'm running that. So let's go ahead and run that again. And there we go. That looks a little bit better, a little bit more like what I expected. So we have the user data here and here. Then we have the page view data there. Then we have the bad data. And then we have another good record here. So this is more what I was expecting to see. And that makes me pretty happy. So we can come back over here. And I will just say that if you were looking for some examples of how to read from multiple topics at one time, I hope this one over here and then this second one here are both helpful for you. And as usual, this is Alvin Alexander, and I thank you for watching.